Now, at 73 years old, Dennis Condrey is finally opening up about the 5 wrestlers he truly could not stand. And trust me, the stories behind these feuds are wild. So let's not waste any time and jump straight into the video. 1. The Rock and Roll Express. Dennis Condrey's rivalry with the Rock and Roll Express is one of the most famous feuds in wrestling history, and it's also the one he talks about most when discussing the wrestlers he truly disliked. This feud started during his time with Bobby Eaton as the Midnight Express, and it spanned multiple promotions, including Mid-South Wrestling and the NWA under Jim Crockett Promotions. For Condrey, this wasn't just about in-ring competition. It was about the constant tension, the intensity of the matches, and the personalities involved. Condrey has said that part of the frustration came from how much attention the Rock and Roll Express got. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson were incredibly talented, but they also had this ability to connect with the crowd in a way that sometimes overshadowed other wrestlers. Condrey and Eaton were technically perfect, precise, and dangerous in the ring, but the Rock and Roll Express had the charisma that made fans cheer for them every time. For Condrey, that created tension because he felt like he and Eaton were working just as hard, if not harder. The matches between the two teams were legendary. They were fast-paced, intense, and physically demanding. Condrey has admitted that part of the reason he disliked the Rock and Roll Express was simply how much he pushed them during these matches. They would go at it night after night, sometimes in back-to-back shows, leaving everyone completely exhausted. Condrey respected their skill, but he also admitted that the constant high-energy style sometimes got under his skin, especially when he felt like the crowd reactions didn't reflect the work he was putting in. There were also moments backstage that added fuel to the fire. Condrey has mentioned that personalities clashed. He and Morton in particular often butted heads because both were strong-willed and wanted to be in control of certain aspects of the matches. While nothing ever turned into a full-blown fight, the tension was always there, and it added another layer to the rivalry. Despite all of that, Condrey acknowledges that the Rock and Roll Express made him and Eaton better. They pushed each other to the absolute limit, creating some of the most memorable tag team matches of the era. But even with that respect, Condrey's feelings were clear. There was a part of him that truly hated facing them night after night. The rivalry was exhausting, competitive, and personal, and that's exactly why it has gone down in wrestling history as one of the most intense feuds of all time. 2. The Road Warriors. Dennis Condrey's rivalry with the Road Warriors is one of the most brutal and unforgettable in his career. Condrey, along with Bobby Eaton as the Midnight Express, faced Animal and Hawk during the mid-1980s in the NWA. The Road Warriors were a completely different kind of challenge. They were bigger, stronger, and more intimidating than almost any other team at the time. Condrey has said that part of the reason he had such strong feelings about this feud was because of how physically demanding it was. Wrestling the Road Warriors was like going through a war every night. They hit harder, moved faster for their size, and had a presence that could unsettle even the toughest competitors. One of the most famous moments in this feud was the scaffold match at Starrcade '86. Condrey has openly admitted that this match terrified him. The idea of wrestling at such a height, knowing that one mistake could end in serious injury, was extremely nerve-wracking. The Road Warriors, being as ruthless as they were, didn't hold back. They were completely intense in the ring, using their power and aggression to dominate, and Condrey had to match that intensity just to survive. It pushed him and Eaton to their absolute limits. Every time he stepped into the ring with Animal and Hawk, he knew it could get ugly in an instant. Beyond the physical toll, there was also the psychological element. Condrey hated that the Road Warriors could intimidate not just the fans, but him as well. Their reputation alone demanded respect and caution, and Condrey had to constantly stay on his toes. Any misstep could be dangerous, and that made every encounter tense. He respected their skill, but he also admitted that it frustrated him how dominant and unrelenting they were. It wasn't just a match. It was a test of endurance, nerve, and courage. The Road Warriors' style forced Condrey to adapt and push his limits. He has said that he learned a lot from facing them, including how to think on his feet, maintain focus under extreme pressure, and work with a team that played a completely different style. Even with that respect, his feelings were clear. The Road Warriors were a challenge he both hated and feared. Every time they squared off, it was unpredictable, intense, and dangerous. which is exactly why Condrey remembers them so vividly. 3. The Fantastics. Dennis Condrey's rivalry with the Fantastics is one of the feuds he remembers vividly from his time in world-class championship wrestling. Teaming with Bobby Eaton as the Midnight Express, Condrey faced Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers, who were fast, agile, and incredibly precise in the ring. From the very beginning, Condrey found them to be a frustrating challenge. While the Fantastics were technically excellent and had a smooth, exciting style, Condrey didn't like the way they could dominate a match simply by being quicker and more unpredictable. Every time he stepped into the ring with them, he knew he had to be on top of his game or risk being outmaneuvered. One of the reasons Condrey admits he hated the Fantastics was because of their energy and intensity. They could go at a lightning-fast pace for an entire match, which pushed Condrey and Eaton to work harder than they ever had. Condrey, known for his precision and power, was sometimes frustrated by how often the Fantastics would escape moves, hit quick double-team combinations, and keep the crowd excited. Condrey wanted matches to be brutal, hard-hitting, and story-driven, but the Fantastics' style was more about speed, flair, and crowd reactions. That difference in style often created tension and added fuel to his dislike for them. Another factor was the constant need to protect and adapt. Condrey has said that the Fantastics were so fast and unpredictable that a simple mistake could ruin a spot or lead to an accident. Wrestling them required extreme focus and split-second decision-making. Every sequence, every near fall, every tag had to be precise. If Condrey missed his timing, it could make the match look sloppy or worse, put someone in danger. That added a layer of stress that made the rivalry feel even more intense. Despite the frustration, Condrey has admitted that wrestling the Fantastics made him a better performer. He learned how to adapt to faster opponents, think creatively on the fly, and maintain his composure under pressure. He respected their skill and ability to excite the fans, but that didn't stop him from genuinely hating facing them night after night. The rivalry was exhausting, mentally and physically, and that combination of frustration and respect is what made it so memorable. In the end, Condrey's feud with the Fantastics stands out as a classic example of opposites clashing in the ring. It was fast, smart, and high energy, but also exhausting and stressful. Condrey may have hated facing them at the time, but looking back, it was a rivalry that pushed him and Eaton to be the best, showing why the Midnight Express became one of the most legendary tag teams in wrestling history. 4. The Midnight Rockers. Dennis Condrey's feud with the Midnight Rockers is one of those rivalries that really defined his time in the American Wrestling Association. Teaming with Randy Rose as a version of the Midnight Express, Condrey went head-to-head with Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, who were fast, athletic, and incredibly charismatic. From the very first match, Condrey found them to be both frustrating and challenging. They had a style that was completely different from what he and Rose were used to. While Condrey and Rose relied on precision, teamwork, and clever ring psychology, the Midnight Rockers thrived on speed, aerial moves, and crowd-pleasing sequences. That difference in style created tension and made every match a mental and physical test. Condrey has said that part of the reason he hated facing the Midnight Rockers was because of their energy and unpredictability. Michaels and Jannetty could change the pace of a match in an instant, hitting high-risk moves that forced Condrey to react immediately. He respected their athleticism, but it was also nerve-wracking. One wrong move could ruin a spot, or worse, cause a real injury. Condrey often felt on edge during these matches, which added to his frustration. Another reason the feud stood out for Condrey was the sheer number of matches they had to go through. The AWA was a promotion where teams would wrestle multiple times in different towns each week. That meant Condrey and Rose had to be at their best night after night, adjusting to the fast and unpredictable style of the Midnight Rockers while keeping the storylines fresh. Condrey has said that it was exhausting, both physically and mentally. He respected their skill, but facing them was a constant challenge. There were also moments backstage that added to the tension. Condrey was very protective of his version of the Midnight Express and took pride in controlling the matches. Working with a team as talented and headstrong as Michaels and Jannetty sometimes created clashes over timing, sequences, and finishers. While everything was professional, it built up a personal dislike that made the rivalry even more heated. Despite all this, Condrey acknowledges that the Midnight Rockers pushed him to be better. He had to think faster, adapt to unexpected moves, and maintain his focus under extreme pressure. That combination of frustration, respect, and high stakes is what made the feud so memorable. Condrey may have hated facing Michaels and Jannetty night after night, but it was a rivalry that tested his skill and toughness like no other, and it is still remembered as one of the most intense battles of his career. 5. Jimmy Golden and Robert Fuller. Dennis Condrey's feud with Jimmy Golden and Robert Fuller is one of the more intense chapters in his career, especially during his time in Southeastern Championship Wrestling. Teaming with Randy Rose and Norval Austin as the Midnight Express, Condrey found himself up against Golden and Fuller, who were the hometown favorites in the region. From the very start, Condrey knew this would not be an easy rivalry. Golden and Fuller had a connection with the fans that made every match personal. Condrey, who was used to controlling the ring and imposing his team's strategy, found it frustrating to wrestle against opponents who had both the crowd and the psychological edge on their side. One of the reasons Condrey hated facing Golden and Fuller was their toughness and willingness to go all out to protect their home territory. They knew the local fans were watching, and they gave everything they had every night. Condrey and his team had to push themselves harder than usual to compete, and that constant pressure created tension. He has said that there were nights when the matches felt more like battles than performances. Golden and Fuller were not just skilled, they were relentless, which made every encounter exhausting both mentally and physically. The rivalry also became personal because of the way storylines were booked in SECW. Condrey has admitted that he and his team were driven out of the territory, which added real-life heat to the feud. It wasn't just about wrestling for a title or entertaining the fans. It was about dominance and proving which team could truly control the area. That made Condrey's dislike for Golden and Fuller even stronger. He respected their skill and knew they were talented, but he also hated the constant pushback that made his life as a heel much harder. Another aspect of the feud was the physicality. Golden and Fuller were not afraid to get rough in the ring, and Condrey had to match that intensity while still performing the complex tag team maneuvers that the Midnight Express was known for. Every match required precision, coordination, and nerves of steel, which kept Condrey on edge for weeks at a time. In the end, the feud with Jimmy Golden and Robert Fuller stands out as one of the most challenging periods in Condrey's career. It tested his skill, his patience, and his mental toughness. While he may have hated facing them, the rivalry also proved why the Midnight Express became legendary. Condrey walked away from those matches knowing he had been pushed to his limits, both in the ring and beyond, which is why this chapter remains unforgettable in his wrestling story. And that wraps up today's video. Make sure to hit like and subscribe so you never miss an update.